What's happening, troops? I know you're going to absolutely fucking love this episode. It's with Kath Parrington. I know if you're outside the YN network, you won't know Kath, but I'm telling you just now, by the end of this episode, you're going to absolutely love her. She is incredible. She's someone that has achieved financial freedom at the age of 47 just by simply investing a small amount of her wage, and she's going to share on this podcast exactly how that is possible, how you don't need to earn mad amounts of money to be financially free. But she also goes into the kind of deeper levels of her life when it comes to losing people close to you. If you're someone that is listening to this podcast and you've went through something along the lines of losing somebody close to you, I'm pretty sure everyone has at some point. This is a podcast episode that not only shines light on investing, business, helps you move forward on that front, but helps you prepare for something that could happen in the future and understand at least if someone like Kath can get through what she went through, you can absolutely get through it too. So I know this is the part, like I've said in the first couple of episodes, that you usually can skip through or usually do skip through, but I promise you're going to want to listen to this one, especially preparing you for the episode ahead with Kath. There's a lot of the podcast that I speak about a wonderful individual called Bex. She is my partner and she is truly incredible in terms of not only just being supportive and allowing me to move forward within my business journeys. She's also a personal trainer. She specialises in working with females, specialises in working with females. She's incredible at what she does. She changes lives in every way, shape or form. And she's also the kind of person that you do want in your corner. You're going to see that throughout the episode where I'm speaking about how fantastic she is as an individual. And if you're listening to this thinking that you want to get in shape or you want to change your life, I promise you're going to want to get in touch with Bex. She's got an amazing Instagram, Rebecca McKenzie Fitness. You're going to want to go on there, check her client results, check where she's located as well, and get in touch with her, man, because she is truly incredible. You're going to want her in your corner. And like I said, man, if you're wanting to get in shape, I would highly advise that you don't go with anyone else. Episode 3 of the podcast then, with Mrs. Kath Parrington. Long overdue. Even since I seen you on the last podcast, I was thinking to myself, why have I not got Kath on the podcast yet? So a little bit of a rundown. You'll be able to guess by the title, how to become financially free or whatever it is that I've titled it along those lines. Kath is someone that has inspired me massively on this side of how easy it is with just investing to become financially free, and how you don't actually need to make millions in a short space of time to become financially free as well. So do you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do, Kath?
Sure, yes, it's a pleasure to be here, John, to start with. I am Kath Parrington. I am an investor. I think that's where my heart is. It took me quite a long time to realise that that's what I was. My background is that I spent 25 years working for a bank, and eventually that didn't suit me anymore. In fact, I think it broke me. But during the time that I was working, I realised eventually that I am an investor and that's where my heart is. Yeah. And so now I look after myself. I'm financially free. I make my own decisions in terms of how I spend my time, how I choose to spend my time. Currently, my business is focused around helping people plan, particularly business plans. And I've even written a book, so I'm now an author as well.
Another one added to the list, yeah. I would guess. And your book's incredible. I've worked with you obviously in the plan behind YN and what we're doing on that front as well, and it helped me massively, especially like we were just speaking about before we started. I'm very much an ideas man, and I get very excited and I get buzzing, and I think this idea is going to be life changing, and it most likely is, because I know what it feels like when it comes out an idea and you realise you can make it a reality. You get that gut instinct feeling, you just feel like it's all going to be a reality. And until when you start, you get that first one, which that first one for me was YN, and then they start to snowball and you start to get one after another, and then you start to realise, shit, I actually can't do all of these right now. And that's where obviously we need to plan, and that's where even over Christmas time felt a bit like I was losing some direction, and the plan that we wrote up helped me gain clarity by bringing it back and using it as a North Star almost to keep me on the straight path of what I wanted to actually do.
I like the term North Star. I think that's a good term, because most people get hung up on plans as being set in stone, and once you've set that direction, you're stuck with it. And plans ain't like that for me. It's about having a destination in mind, having something to aim for. Yep. But then, as situations change, as opportunities come up, great, change direction.
Yep. And just pivot. I mean, there's so many times where we've pivoted. It's been so beneficial. But on the investor front, we always start off with a book in it. With Gino, we started off with Relentless by Tim Grover. Incredible book. And recently reading that with Scott McClure, we started off with a bunch of books to do with abundance and how we were going to, because he was the first lad that I met that, he was doing incredibly well, but he was just wanted to help me. And I didn't even, the first time I was meeting him, we sat for 3 hours and he was telling me how I could run Young and Lazy, how I could put all these things into place. And the abundance mindset is just what sets people apart, man. But we spoke briefly about Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And how that was a book that spoke to you in some sort of way. I felt like it was...
It completely spoke to me. It explained a lot of things to me. So it was probably Rich Dad, Poor Dad that gave me the confidence to say that actually I am an investor. Up until that point, the investing stuff was stuff that I did, but I did with a purpose. I did to make me feel safe. It was about security. And I didn't really realise that I was an investor and that I was good at it. And it was only when it was actually Paula Wingate's fault. Paula introduced me to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And we talked through the quadrant. And the quadrant is your employed, self-employed, business owner, and then investor. And Paula kind of talked through the quadrant in terms of the path that people take from employed to self-employed to business owner to investor. And I realised I'd gone straight from employed to investor and missed the other two.
Yeah.
And it was just a light bulb moment for me because I realised that A, that's what I'd done, and B, that it was possible.
Yeah.
And that started giving me confidence to actually come out and say, yeah, I'm an investor. That is what I've actually spent the last 30 odd years doing without realising that that's what I'd done.
Yeah.
So it helped me put the label on it. There's also some things in there that I think just everyone should learn at school, and they don't.
Yeah.
Instinctively, I'd never got into that kind of consumer treadmill. It just didn't do anything for me. So I was never about shoes, handbag, bigger house, expensive car. None of that floated my boat.
Yeah.
But it was the language of realising that what I'd chosen to do was put my money into assets as opposed to buying stuff.
Yeah.
And again, that was a light bulb moment for me. So yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, fabulous book. Everyone should learn from it.
Absolutely. I swear the Paula not used to play the Casual Chord and the and the in the office when she was at, because my mum used to speak to me about it. I remember she came in one of the days and she was like, John, we need to buy this. You would love this. Because obviously with my love for numbers, she was like, you would love this. It's like an even better version of Monopoly. Like it's incredible. And
yeah, Paula's all about gamifying the numbers. Yeah. Numbers are a game. They're a way of keeping score to her. Numbers are kind of a bit different for me, but even so, I recognise the scoreboard bit definitely. Yeah. I mean, as a kid, I used to love Monopoly. Yeah. One of my favourite games. I hadn't realised that there were strategies involved. I never went for Mayfair and the blue ones, Park Lane. They weren't important to me. It was the green ones and the orange ones and the red ones that won the game. Yeah. It was Fleet Street, it was Bond Street, Vine Street. It was those mid-range ones with loads of property on. That's how you won.
Yeah. It's something that, because I always refer to, when I think about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the thing that inspired me and that always sticks in the back of my mind is when he speaks about how his rich dad wasn't actually rich yet, and how stereotypical people were passing judgment on this, business owner that was living in not necessarily in a poor area as such, but they were referring to how he didn't have a big fancy car or a big fancy house, and people were kind of questioning it almost in terms of like, well, this guy's not really rich yet, so who's he to give people advice on what there is to be done? When he was so, it was like, when I was reading through the book, it was almost like he was on he believed so much in what he was doing that he knew he was going to become financially free. And weirdly enough, it was the educated poor dad that was like, to Robert, you should go and speak to so-and-so's dad. And it wasn't until, it was almost like Robert's dad did see the potential in the rich dad, and Robert also benefited massively from it. And now he's Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad Poor Dad, this humongous investor. It's an incredible book, man. Probably one of the first books I ever read, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's definitely like a trendsetter. Kind of like most people kind of start around about there, and it's a great place to start, man. Great place to understand the investing front. non-investor front as well, you invest in quite a few businesses run about me, to be fair. Quite a few. And you kind of briefly spoke about it just beforehand to Paul. As an investor, I would see you as an enabler. You enable people to come in and make changes to their business that's going to positively impact them and their business and the people that they serve. And you allow that to happen, but you want to make it happen. And there's a lot of businesses that would benefit from you, and not only just from the cash flow aspect, but sitting with you with something like, you know, your master plan that you're working on and helping other businesses. Anyone would benefit from it, man. Is that how you see it as well?
I do. It's, for me, it's all part of that abundance thing.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying, it's not about having millions. It's not about the classical kind of definition of people think, you know, you're a millionaire, therefore you can be an investor. It's not about the quantity of money. Money's the enabler for me. So I'll tell people I am financially free, but I'm not a millionaire. You know, I don't have the flat in Monaco. I don't have the private jet, and I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
What I have is I have enough money to choose where I spend my time. So spending my time quite often will be a conversation to help someone grow and develop, and I can choose to do that. I can choose to spend time with my family, which is really precious to me, with my dogs. And it also means that I can choose to occasionally support a business when it's in that expansion phase or when it's starting to grow, you know. So it's about investing. So it might be investing in the business directly, or it might just be investing in the services that the business offers. Because one thing that I am passionate about is working together to make a bigger pie.
Yeah.
It's about collaboration. It's about, you know, don't fight over who gets the biggest slice of the pie. It's about finding ways to work together to make a bigger pie so everyone benefits. I see that as how a strong community of small businesses can make a massive impact to the wider community around you. So if in investing, sometimes I'll just invest in the services, buy the services from someone that I want to encourage, because it actually grows the economy organically and everyone wins, and that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah. Do you ever, what I thought you were going to say there was not just the business or the service, but you sometimes invest in the people?
Yeah.
So.
Do you know what I am about people? I can't help it. One of my corporate roles, really where I started in corporate, was leadership. It was about motivating, inspiring, growing and developing people. And I keep coming back to that. I'm passionate about seeing people grow, helping people become a better version of themselves, and therefore being able to contribute back to everyone around them. Love doing that.
So in terms of your work journey then, because you became financially free at 47, which from when we've discussed about it is primarily through decisions you made through your work journey as an employee.
Yeah.
And did you want to speak a bit about that then, and how?
Yeah, happy to. I started work. I had my first proper job at the age of 22. So I was a good girl. I got my O-levels and my A-levels, and I went to university and I got my law degree and decided I didn't want to be a solicitor when I grew up, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up, and I don't think I really grew up. So I fell into banking. So at the age of 22, I started off on the phones in the call centre for First Direct. And back then I wasn't paid a lot. You know, my monthly salary was probably about 900 quid. It really wasn't very much at all. But right from the start, I wanted to be secure. Now, the security thing comes back to when I was a kid. Yeah. So the age of 11, my dad worked on the steelworks in Scunthorpe, and Scunthorpe was a steel town. There was really just the two steelworks. They were the biggest employer. And at the age of 10, steel strike happened. So that was before the miners' strike. Yeah. But basically, the steel workers went up against the Margaret Thatcher government. So that was 1979, 1980s. So start of 1980, the steelworks went on strike. And for 14 weeks, Dad was on strike. Now, that was something and nothing. We didn't starve. We weren't skint. But I just felt that was the first time I'd ever known that money was important. Yeah. And then the following year, they closed one of the steelworks down. Dad was made redundant. Mum was a teacher, so we didn't starve. We were fine, but I just felt that financial insecurity at the age of about 11. And I think because of that, I just formed this determination that I didn't ever want to have to worry about money.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the investing comes from when I look back at it. So as soon as I got my first proper job, it was about, right, how do I start looking after my future? How do I make sure that I'm, if the worst happens, that rainy day, how do I make sure that I'm looked after?
Yeah.
That I've always got a roof over my head. So the first thing I did was put the absolute maximum I could into my pension.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a bank, so they offered a good pension scheme. I put 7% in. If I put 7% in, then the bank matched that 7% and put another 2% in.
Yeah.
Great, free money. Although 7% of 900 quid was a big chunk of money back then. I didn't have the money, but because I'd never had it, I didn't miss it.
Mm-hmm.
And I genuinely locked that away somewhere where I couldn't touch it. Because you think about it, you put it in your pension, can't see it for 40 years at that stage, So it's a leap of faith, really. But I just got into the habit of putting the maximum into my pension. And then I realised, well, I can start putting a bit away in a stocks and shares ISA, because that was another way of putting it away where I couldn't touch it. It was like I didn't quite trust myself.
Yeah.
So I would put the money somewhere where I could absolutely, if I desperately needed it, I could get it.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to touch it. So I wanted to make it difficult for myself, hence putting it into a stocks and shares ISA as opposed to just putting in another cash account.
Yeah.
And it was just locking little bits away. So then each time I got a pay rise, I locked a bit more away. Ended up in share option schemes and just locking more and more little bits away.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where, if you start that early enough, and even if it's only a small amount, you get the benefit of the compound effect.
Yeah.
Genuine compound interest. If you don't touch that money, the interest goes back into the thing that's growing.
Yeah.
So not only are you growing your capital and adding a little bit of capital, your interests add into that. You get an interest on your interest on your interest on your interest. And while it doesn't make a lot of difference in the first couple of months, by the time you're 30 years down the line, boy, does it make a lot of difference. So that's really where it came from. It was this obsessive need for security.
Yeah. And I think the Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, incredible book. Anyone that's wanting to learn more about that, that's definitely one of the game changers, especially at the beginning. I actually need to go back and read it again. It's been that long since I read it, but yeah, the Compound Effect, something as simple as investing 7% of your wage. And did you say £900 a month, by the way? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I don't know if you said £900 a week.
No, 900 quid a month. No, that's what I started on.
And that's where, like, a lot of people, for example, will always say, like, I've not got enough to invest though. Whereas, like, you literally started with £900 a month, 7% of that. You only attempt to do the maths on it. It's like,
but it was money that I'd never had, so I didn't miss it. And I think that was the habit. I refused to get involved in the shoes and handbags thing. I really, where everyone wanted a bigger and better car, and they get themselves into, they get a loan to get the next car, or they get the car on finance, and they wanted a bigger telly. And, back then your mobile phone was a Nokia, It wasn't anything special, it wasn't like an iPhone or anything like that. But, people wanted designer handbags and they wanted labels, and I was buying my clothes from Tesco's, because stuff like that just wasn't important to me. What was important to me was feeling safe, feeling secure, which it was a real powerful motivator. Now, I learned later, actually, that while that was a powerful motivator, it's not the most powerful motivator, because anything that's, I would say, negative. So, for example, I wanted to put money away because I wanted to feel safe. It was about being scared almost. And as soon as you're scared and you're kind of in a negative emotion, it'll drive you. It's a powerful driver, but it also limits you. And I think if you can find a positive driver, that just opens up more and more potential.
Yep.
But even so, it was such a powerful driver. It got me to the stage where I had started locking money away, and the more I put away, the more I realised that I could do more with it. So it wasn't just the stocks and shares and the cash, because the next thing I did was obviously buy my own house. And again, the security driver in me was pay that off as quickly as possible, pay it off as quickly as possible. So I owned my own house. I felt safe. And that was really where it started, and it could have stuck there.
Yeah.
But, circumstances change. I ended up moving to Scotland. And that was when I realised I could buy a house up here, keep the house down there, rent the house out down there, and use that to pay the mortgage up here. So that was my first step into investing in property. So I was kind of an accidental landlord at that stage.
And how many properties do you own now?
So I have, I'll say it is now 6.5 because I've just bought a new flat.
Okay.
So I've got 6.5 residential. So that's 3 in my own name, 3 in a limited company, and half is a joint venture with another property investor.
Okay.
And I also own a commercial property in my pension.
Awesome. Love it. And in terms of, because when I was thinking about what you were speaking about, in terms of like the deep-rooted security, it's funny, whenever I chat to anyone, maybe people that I've reconnected with through school or whatever, and maybe seeing what I'm doing in business, they kind of bring up their relationship with money.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say things like, I just end up spending all my money, man. I don't know why. And I'm like, if you could really, really go deep into the answer of why you actually feel the way you do about money, you'll find the answer in there. And for me, so weird because it wasn't until I read Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and it's funny because I was speaking to Connor Malone, who'll be coming on the podcast as well, and Connor was chatting about that first book that always changes your life. You can rave about it to everyone else, but the reality is it won't have that exact same effect on them because it's not, if they're already a big reader, it's not going to be the book that changed their life in it. And I started to think more about that, but I also started to think about when I was reading through it, of epiphany moments. I was like, holy shit. And it was when it was referring to your relationship from money is from the financial blueprint you get from your mum and your dad. I started to think my mum is incredible with money now, and now that she's in business, and she worked obviously an incredibly cushy job in terms of wage wise, even though stress wise through the roof. She was someone that mum loved spending on me. She would spoil me rotten like as a kid, man, and she didn't, because I was our first kid. It was very much like she didn't care what anyone had to say. She didn't care about whether I was going to go out it in 8 weeks, talking like when I was a literal baby and it didn't matter. Whereas my dad was as tight as they come. He's a tight bastard. He was as tight as they come, and would ridicule me over like a fiver. Losing a fiver, he would be raging, upset. So what did I do? I used to save up money for a large amount of time and spend it all. So when it came to like Christmas time, and I was so fortunate to where my gran and granda from my mum's side would spoil me rotten. Like any of the grandkids, that was like their day. I'd turn up and my gran and granda would have, either a tower of presents or a card that was like so chunky. I know, like anyone's listening on audio, I was trying to get a visual of it, but so chunky that you could literally like wrap your hand around how much cash was in the envelope in it, and that was like their thing. So every time it got to Christmas time, I'd get this money, and it would be so fucking much that I wouldn't even know what to do with it. It was like, spend it. Getting to the Boxing Day, I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Not as usual as I do now, getting up at 6 a.m. pretty much every morning, but back then when I was, 13, 14, get up at 6 to go into town on Boxing Day was something that was unheard of, and the motivator was the fact that I had this large amount of money. I'd come home with 5 bags of clothes and all these different things, all these new games and all this madness, and my mum would sit there and it would be like I don't know, like I was going to say like a catwalk show. I'd come in with all my clothes, I'd be showing them her what it is and all that, and she would be like, that's amazing, that's this, that, and they all just loved it. And it wasn't until I started to read the book that the financial blueprint that I had developed was very much a middle ground. I'd save for long periods of time, I'd buy something that I really wanted. So, for example, when I started at college and I got my first student loan, I went and bought a big pair of Beats because I was like, I want the best headphones, and then it was, I need a laptop, a better laptop, a gaming laptop, and it was constant. At that stage, that was when I read Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, and that helped me understand shit. And it wasn't, and at that time, the big student loan payment was like, I think it's 2 months, so it was £800 because I was getting £396 or whatever because my mum's wage previously, that was just before she got made redundant, so
yeah,
I was getting the minimum you could get at college. And then when I started to understand that throughout that year, I started saving like £150 of my 396, and it was very much like I learned to live on the bare minimum. Obviously, fortunate my mum, considering like I couldn't pay rent and stuff, obviously on that. But in terms of actually living, I was literally could live on like 200 quid.
Yeah.
And when I started to understand that and started to understand that no matter how much I made, I was in control of how much I saved, how much I invested, and very much now I do very much have the mindset of can be a bit cowboy like when I see a lot of things that I believe in or see people that I believe in that can help buy and get to where it needs to be. And I'll be very much look at the forecast. Yes, implement that in. Let's just fucking do it. Let's make it happen. And I can be a wee bit cowboy like in that side, but it's all for the matter of
It's still a question though of investing, isn't it? Because you've recognised that. I mean, it might be that you follow your intuition a little bit more with those kind of investments, but you are still making those decisions to invest as opposed to spend, and I think that's a big difference. I mean, I know I was lucky with my upbringing, I really was, because we were all about family and we were all about experiences. So I had the happiest childhood, and it was all about making memories.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't about stuff, it wasn't about things. So I think, again, financial blueprint, you know, money was about long term being safe, secure, being proud to own your own house. I was so proud that mum and dad owned their own house. We didn't rent, you know, it was their own house.
Yeah.
And it was just something that it felt good to say that was ours. It couldn't be taken away. And I think that's why I wanted to buy my own house outright. You know, I wanted to own that. And I think it was that blueprint about valuing experiences over stuff actually made it easy to follow that security route. So I think I was very much a saving blueprint, a security blueprint, as opposed to a spending blueprint.
Yeah.
But I love your example there where you've kind of learned that there's a big difference between spending and investing.
Yeah.
You know, spending is about that transitory pleasure of owning stuff, the latest shiny thing. And as soon as you own it, that's it, you've got it. What are you going to do with it? You know, it's not exciting anymore. It's the thrill of the chase and it's gone. Whereas investing is about recognizing that you are spending that money on something that will pay you back.
Yeah.
So we're back to Robert Kiyosaki in terms of owning assets, putting money into assets as opposed to liabilities. So an asset's something that you buy with a view to it paying you back, you know, paying your money in your sleep ideally, so you don't actually have to work for it.
Maybe 3.5 times your return.
There you go.
Always the goal, always the target. It was funny because even briefly today on one of the focus groups, we were speaking about, because my handwriting's terrible in it. So like,
yes, that's mine.
When people ask for my notes, it's like, you don't want my notes, man. If you want to dissect, and you want even more of a mission than just going and asking someone else, then feel free. But it was something that Callum Patterson brought up about this new, it's called The Remarkable. Have you came across it yet? No. Basically like a mini kind of digital notepad that literally allows you to store specific folders. Like the layout of it is perfect. It's incredible, and he was showing me it today in it, and you get that wee buzz. You're like, oh my god, that is actually class. That is dynamite. I don't need to because I'm sitting there at my desk now, and there's 9 notepads, man, and they've all got different labels on it: focus group, coaching, notes, studying. You know, whatever course I'm doing. I had a one for you at one point as well because we were doing that work together.
Yep.
And I'm like, this just needs to stop, man, because now I've got like stacks on drawers stacked with books, you know, notepads that I filled out, and I need to go back and look through them. And I was like, oh, that Remarkable just sort all that shit for me, man. I wouldn't even need to stress it. But it's like questioning whether or not is it actually going to make me money. And the reality is, unless you go really deep into it and really convince yourself that it's going to make you money, it's not an asset. So it's just like, and that's where it's like drawing the line almost. I mean, I pretty much wear the same stuff every day. I pretty much just wear Young and Lazy now if I'm wearing hoodies. If I actually got to the point, man, and I'll happily share it in it because pretty much every guy goes through it. At one point, I went downstairs and my mum turned around to me. She's like, John, you got a hole in your joggies? And I was like, oh, aye. And it was at my leg. I was like, aye. And she was like, nah. no happening. No happening. She was like, I'm ordering you joggies, like just link me. And I was like, Mum, I can buy myself joggies. You know what I mean? It's no, I'm like, that is fine. I just don't know, just didn't spring in my mind. I'm like, I'm not gonna like, I don't care what people think in it. So when it comes to, I'm always like, nah, man, you link me those joggies now, or else I'm just gonna go and order some anyways. And I was like, cool, here we go. And then it's the same with Bex, man. Bex is like, see any opportunity, man, any sniff at her being able to just go and buy me something, which is, you know, I'm not ungrateful for it. I'm incredibly grateful for it. But having people like that just, it's like you don't spend that much on yourself, so other people just want to, spend on you. It's a great problem to have.
It's a nice problem to have. Sounds like you need to work on their mindset a little bit as well.
I know. They
work
just
on
can't,
the financial blueprint.
I know. They can't help but give, man. They're serious givers, Mama and Bex. The both of them they just want to give in abundance, man.
And it's nice to be surrounded by that abundance as well. Yeah. I think the opportunity potentially for you then is to be the enabler that rewards that in the long run. So if they're investing their abundance in you in the short term, then you're focusing on growing YEN so that together everyone benefits. You grow that big enough and you can just repay that abundance back.
It was actually something that I've kind of briefly brought up to you before. I think about Posty, the guy from my stream that used to invest. Fucking, if you're listening to this just now, Posty, you're an absolute goat. Like, this guy gifted over $5,000 worth of subs to my stream. He was actually one of the enablers that allowed me to go full time, not need to go back to my work after like COVID and stuff, after the restrictions eased. But that was definitely something, when I chatted to him and got in a bit of detail, it was very much, he told me this story, I think it was about Goldman Sachs when they were originally founded. He was speaking about how one of the co-founders was, really scraping by, and at that time his partner was doing really well. She had a good job, she was making a lot of money, and he was one of the first quote unquote men that allowed their wife to pay for everything. And I remember Posty said to me, because Bex was like, it would actually get to the point, right, where Bex would try and buy things from me in it, and if I said no, she would come into my stream and gift me subs. They basically gift me the money without me even. And I'm like, she was just in it. Was obviously, like I said, really fortunate position to be in, but it was very much like I had that macho man. No, you're not paying for it, and I'm paying for everything myself, paying for the food. And it was very much like, my dad had that kind of similar mindset when I was growing up. And it wasn't until I actually sat down with Posty, and it was almost like a mentor conversation where he was like, just for context, guys, Posty was someone that, he owns real estate, 6 companies, huge over in Florida. And when he was giving me that advice, it came from a place of someone that had, been there, done it, got the t-shirt. And he was like, mate, I'm telling you just now, innit, if you allow Bex to help you in any way in which you can, because to begin with, especially the streaming side of things, I was having months where I would make $1,000. I'd had a month where I made $2,500. And I had months where I made 300 quid.
Yeah.
And it was like the fluctuation, the roller coaster of it was very much hard to deal with. You had to really be on top of it, which I was with my numbers, which allowed me to do it for over 18 months. But it was also like when I came into business, it was like I didn't have the financial backing behind me that was very much right, cool, I can go and invest in all this kind of stuff. I leveraged a lot of what YN was doing in a way to get a website built, to bring on sponsors, to do all this thing. And without that financial backing behind me, it taught me a lot more than just being able to just have it there and just splash it and make mistakes with it and all this kind of stuff. So it made me a better person. But when it came to like Posty giving me that piece of advice, it was very much not only for your benefit, for her benefit as well. Bex wants to support you. Let her do it, man. And if she wants to support you, and if you want her to be an enabler, you can pay her back in abundance anyways. And don't worry about the macho man, you have to pay for everything. If she wants to pay for food when you go out, let her pay for food, man. Don't stress it. And it was hearing that coming through, it was like a switch almost, where it was like, you know what, yeah, like I'm gonna be okay with that happening. And it was almost ridiculous as well, where it was like, why did I even think that in the first place? Why did I think that I had to pay for everything? why was it a macho man mindset of, you know, you don't pay for anything at all while you're with me and all this kind of stuff. And since doing that, it was a massive weight off my shoulders too, because you put your own weight on your shoulders, and it eliminated that, and it allowed me to be where I am today. Bex helped with a lot of that kind of stuff. So did my mum. You know, a lot of people helped me.
But if you think about it, it made them happy as well.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the abundance stuff. I am a great believer, and I do think that whatever you give out, it comes back one way or another. And in allowing someone to help you, you're helping them because you're giving them the satisfaction and the pleasure.
Yeah.
You know, and actually giving them the feeling that they have helped you. And as a result of that, you grow, they grow. And if you take that in the right spirit and don't just take that, but invest it in some way. So invest that in your future, in your combined future. Invest that mentally in terms of wanting to be able to give them it back 3.5 times when the time's right. It means you've got the right mindset, and that's that virtuous spiral that grows it, lifts everyone up as opposed to dropping down.
Yeah, and that's where the thinking about what you were saying earlier as well, in terms of if you're on the receiving end, not necessarily receiving end as such, but if you're on the end of you want to invest in someone, you want to help someone, and they don't take your help, it can very much be like I just want to help you. Like, just take my help, man. Like, there's no, please just take my help. And if they're coming from an angle of like, no, I can't do that, I can't allow you to help me, or I can't do this, you're not sitting there thinking, oh great, they said no. You're sitting there thinking, oh, I wish they would just let me help them, man. And it just causes more stress than actually putting the money in.
It doesn't. I think it depends on your frame of mind, because at the end of the day, the only thing that you can control is the way that you react to a situation. You can't control how someone else is going to take that offer, and it might just be they're not ready for it at this stage. They've got some learning and some growing to do. Might be there's something else going on, but
Deeper stuff.
Best you can do is offer.
Yeah,
for
sure. So in terms of, there was one of the things that was on my list to speak to you about, a bit of the deeper side of things. You're one of the only people that I know that has been, would you say, unfortunate enough? Unfortunate enough. I was trying to think about how to phrase that as I was walking over. I was like, I don't know.
I am unlucky in that respect, I guess. So you're referring to the fact that I've lost 2 husbands. Yeah. Which is, it's a situation it's a strange situation to find yourself in. Yeah. So by the age of 47, 47 was the year that I realised I was financially free. And the reason that I finally realised that, and I had to accept that, was because I'd lost my second husband at that stage. So I lost my first husband, Kev, at the age of 39. And then I met Mick, and we got together, and short while later, not that long really, about 8 years later, I was in the same situation again. So, and at that stage, I realised that I just wasn't up for being an employee anymore and going out and earning a living anymore. And because of that, I just walked away from the corporate career, and I took some time out to go recover from what was quite a tough time. And it was that realization that I didn't want to work anymore. And when I sat down and I worked out, I suddenly realized I didn't need to work anymore. And I think if that hadn't happened, I might not have taken that step back. I might have carried on pushing myself through that corporate mill and actually not had the opportunity to help everyone that I've got to help now. So strange time. It's interesting when you tell people that you're a widow, they don't really know how to take you. They really don't. And I can understand that as well, because people want to empathise, but they've not been there. Or if they have been there, doesn't mean that they would react in the same way that you do. And I just think I've got this thing in me that says that I've got to carry on, and not just carry on, but enjoy the rest of my life. I get very frustrated with people who, again, I think it's they're not getting involved with the material thing. What's the most important thing to me has always been about making the memories. You know, the memories I had from my childhood are very happy because it was about spending time together and enjoying that time together rather than wasting time on stuff.
Yeah.
So I think because of that, the time I spent with Kev was amazing because we spent all our time making memories as opposed to wasting time on stuff. So, you know, we rode the motorbikes across Europe. We rode bikes in America. You know, we got married in Las Vegas on a Harley in a drive-through. You know, that was fun. And it was all about the memories. You know, I got to travel to Africa, Pakistan, Bhutan in the Himalayas. You know, traveling was important. So when I lost Kev, although it was heartbreaking and it was a hell of a shock, I didn't have those regrets that people often have about, you know, we wasted, we missed the opportunity. We didn't miss opportunities. We never turned an opportunity down. So I think because of that, when I met Mick, it was right, well, where's the opportunities? Let's get on with this. Life's too short. Don't waste it. So again, I spent the next 8 years making a whole load of memories. So when I lost Mick, it was enough to stop me in my tracks. Yeah, it was. I wasn't, mentally, I wasn't in a good space at the time. But it also enabled me to say I didn't waste a minute of it. And as a result of that, I didn't want to get bogged down in losing a lot of time and losing a lot of momentum. So I wanted to pick myself up and get out there and make some more memories.
Yeah. How long were you with Kev for?
Kev, oh God, I met him when I was 22. So we were together nearly 13 years when we got married. And then I lost him just under 5 years later. So we were together about 18 years. With Mick, I was with him about 8 years.
Mm-hmm. And then when you lost Kev in the first place, obviously you kind of spoke about how it was heartbroken and stuff like that, but what was I don't know, it's like, I always think about it, how when you get a buzz, right, for example, you get a buzz or you feel inspired or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm going to make a video, I'm going to get this out, or you start to feel something that you know that someone on the receiving end isn't exactly feeling what you're feeling. And that's what I get from listening to you. It's like I want to understand as deep as I can about how you were feeling, just so that I'll never be able to, well, you know, when we think about like in the future, I'll hopefully never have to go through what you went through. But it's also thinking about at this current stage, understanding what you actually felt like in that moment, especially with the first loss of Kevin and then Mick as well. So like when it happened with Kev, was it a surprise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on both occasions, I lost both of them to sudden heart attacks. There was no warning. It came out of the blue. And I'd see Mick, when I met Mick, we had a lot in common because he'd just lost his wife to cancer.
Okay.
And we had quite a long discussion about whether it was better to know it was coming or whether it's, you know, it was better for it to come as a shock. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to that. You know, if you know you're going to lose someone, you get time to prepare.
Yeah.
You know, you get your head around it, you get time to mentally prepare. Nothing prepares you, but you get chance to say goodbye, you get chance to put things in place. When you lose someone out of the blue like that, you don't get any of that. You know, I was 39, he was 45. We were both fit and healthy. And literally 1 minute, within, 1 minute he was upright and then he collapsed. And within an hour I was in hospital and they were telling me that they were going to have to let him go, that he wasn't coming back. Yeah. And my world just changed just like that. And I was in that kind of perfect world. You know, I owned my own home. We had lots of memories. We adored each other. We were planning for the future. This is the guy I was going to get old with. You know, we were going to grow old together, and all of that was suddenly taken away. So that, I try and liken it to, I don't know if you've ever seen two trees that kind of grow together. So, you know, you've got two trees that have been planted too close together and they kind of grow around each other. Yeah. And they kind of almost get entwined together. And you lose one of those. Mm-hmm. And suddenly you're out of kilter. You feel off balance. Nothing feels right. And I lost that support and I lost that feeling that life was right and I could achieve everything. And it does, it affects you in all sorts of ways, completely undermine my self-confidence. Mm-hmm. Which is ludicrous because I hadn't done anything wrong. Yeah. But it was just because I'd got so used to being part of a pair, being part of something, and then suddenly I was on my own and having to start again. And it's all those little things, those little mental things that are going on in your head. You don't realise how massively they do actually impact on you.
What's happening, troops? Sorry to intervene once again. I know you thought the ads were done. I promise don't skip through this one either. It's someone that you've already heard from. It's Scott McClure. He's an incredible individual. If you haven't already went and watched episode 2, because this is episode 3 with Kath, if you haven't already went and watched that episode, trust me, right, if you're sitting there, right, you're hating your work, you're wanting to start a brand, you're wanting to change lives in the way of, nah, it's fucking shit, mate. I keep bringing up his old market, man. I've been working with him for too long, mate. The fact he's changing his marketing has thrown me off. I know too much, mate, that's true. Sometimes less is more. What's happening, troops? I know, I've already went in with an ad to begin with, but this podcast was also brought to you by Scott McClure. I've already briefly spoke about him in podcast 1 because he was so kind to sponsor that episode, but secondly, he was also in podcast episode 2 as the guest. So if you're sitting here at the moment, right, and you're thinking about starting a brand, or you've already got a brand, but it's not filling the potential that you want it to, and in terms of that potential, troops, that's 6 figures. If you're wanting it to be generating 6 and 7 figures, he's the kind of guy that you want to be chatting to. He's been there, he's done it, he's got 2 brands that are going on and generating a mad amount of cash flow. We speak about it in podcast 2. If you think that you want more information or you want to see what he's like, he's the kind of guy that you want to go and really, immerse in that episode. And after immersing, if you don't feel like he's the kind of guy that you want to work with, then I don't know what to fucking tell you, because he's truly incredible. He's the kind of guy that you want in your corner. You want him pushing you forward, and you want him giving you all the little insights that is going to fast track your process of starting your brand, changing your life, and changing everyone else's life in the meantime. This is for people who are wanting a cash flowing asset. They want to get their money making more money, and they want to obviously fast track the process by going with someone like Scott. I'm going to have his Instagram pop up on the screen here. It's scott.mcclure. You can go on there, have a look at his results, have a look at his previous clients. I think I spoke about in podcast episode 1 and 2 as well, that he had previous guests that within the first day of their brand launching, bringing on over 4 figures, absolutely fucking crushing it. And that's no surprise. Scott is truly incredible at what he does, and it's an amazing opportunity for anyone before he ends up jam-packed with clients. He already is, to be fair. The fact he's taking on more is a joke. So make sure that you get in there, drop him a message, and change your life.
So yeah, it was, to a great extent, I had to learn to live again. I had to learn to enjoy life again.
Yeah.
But it taught me a lot of resilience as well. I've always been very stubborn, very independent, and that helped because I didn't need someone to help me survive, to live. But I actually learned that I liked being with someone. I liked being part of something.
Yeah.
And I absolutely still do.
Yeah. Hence
why I'm now with Richie, who's the bravest bloke I know, because he knows my track record, he knows my history, and he's still with me. I'm not very good at keeping him alive,
Yeah. Would you say that as your greatest lesson in terms of the resilience aspect and being a part of something?
Yeah, I think certainly for me, it was important for me to recognise that I do want to be part of something. I like being part of a relationship. I'm not one of those people who wants to be on my own. But again, it's like choices. I can choose whether I spend my time with someone or not. Anyone can. I think whenever something unexpected happens, it tests you, and it helps you decide what you really, really want. And it reinforced to me that memories were more important than stuff, that I still liked security, because but also that the financial security was only one part of it, because you can have all the financial security you want and you can still lose the emotional security.
Yeah.
So, there's different dimensions to that. But it reinforced to me that I wasn't wrong in terms of valuing memories over stuff, definitely. And I think that's something that I try and make sure that people learn sooner rather than later. It's so frustrating seeing people chasing that bigger car and thinking they're going to be happy when they've got the mansion on the hill and the private jet. And actually, they're never happy because they're not chasing something real. Yeah. What's real is the people around you. I mean, the one thing that's certain is there's none of us getting out of here alive. Yeah. We're all dying one day at a time. It is a fact, and it's the only fact. But it's finding that balance, making sure that you are planning for the right reasons, investing in the emotional things. There's a lovely book, actually, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. everyone should read that book.
Mm.
She was an Australian palliative nurse, and it's a series of stories about what she learned from people who got to kind of their deathbeds and what their regrets were, and making sure that, you know, you don't have those regrets. Live your life, you know. Go run on the beach, get the sand between your toes, you know, ride the Harley across Europe, because that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, not many people can say that's for sure. Do you think that's what like with Kevin Mick, was that what helped you develop the subtle nihilism, the kind of saying something like that? For example, I remember the first time I said that to my mum, she looked at me like I was a ghost. And I said to her, I was like, well, we're all going to die anyways, innit? May as well just do what makes you happy. And she just kind of looked at me in it and she was like, what did you just say? And I'm like, oh, it's true, innit? I don't want to think like that, John. And I'm like, that's fine, innit? But it's actually true though. Like, there's no. And do you think that was because of what happened with Kevin Mick, or did you have that mindset like beforehand?
I think to an extent I had it, but certainly not as crystal clear as I am about it now. I mean, one of the things that I've personally found frustrating about the last couple of years and the COVID stuff is, I don't know, somehow or other, someone set the narrative that the most important thing was quantity of life.
Yeah.
You know, it was all about the number of people who died, the death rates, death figures, and it was all about keeping that number down so the maximum number of people lived. And I get that, and I get the sentiment, but what frustrates me is there's no focus there on quality of life. And actually, quantity of life isn't the thing, you know, because people do die very young. They die for all sorts of reasons, you know, for random reasons. Life's not fair, you know, people die for all the wrong reasons. The regrets are about not having lived before you die.
Yeah.
So for me, actually, the number doesn't matter, you know, and I do think as a society, we really don't look at death in the right way at all. Because of that, we kind of get hung up on it's important to live to a ripe old age. Who said that? Why? You know, and to do that, if we have to wrap someone up in so much cotton wool that they never actually get to live and experience life, for me, that's not living anyway.
I agree for sure.
Oh, we've got deep there.
I know, we've got very deep, man. I was thinking that. That's what took me back. I was like, I even have another question like coming out of my head. I was too soaked into it, almost like a viewer or a listener. But the subtle nihilism side of things, that was something that I was fortunate enough to have spoke about many times. But I had a close mate, Scott, that had that attitude at a very young age, you know, 15, 16, we were together, and he'd bring up stuff like that, and it would very much like it was a different way of viewing the world, but it was also, it was like, not that way when you're getting advice, not necessarily advice, but you're seeing how someone else is living. It's not, I think at a young age, you're trying to model the people that you admire, you're trying to somewhat grasp who you really are, and also what is going to enable you to have the kind of life that you want to live. And if that mindset fits in with that kind of journey that you're looking to be on. And Scott was someone that I seen how he was living and what his mindset was like. And obviously you only see so much because, you know, they're the one that's in with their brain 24 hours a day, so you only see so much. But I seen how he was in social situations. I seen how he was in sports. I seen how he was when he, you know, became obsessed over something in terms of like trading or whatever it was that we were doing together, and also seen how much joy he got in doing things that he loved doing. And it was very much like his mindset of subtle nihilism. I realised that it was an enabler to having more joy in things that you actually wanted to do, and to not spend time stressing about the shit that brings you down, like caring what people think, like what you wear, like the material cars and stuff like that, and understanding deeply why you actually want those things. And I think being exposed to that helped me understand it at a surface level, and also naturally through modelling, just like the Jim Rohn quote that you probably heard that a million times from Paul, innit? Probably know what I'm going to say before I even say it, but you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and Scott was that guy that I spent as much time as I possibly could with. And naturally, through spending time with him, I started to model elements of his mindset. I started to implement it into almost like my arsenal of how to move through life in a way of not caring, kind of kicking my feet up, not getting too pressed, not getting too stressed, to the element of like, my mum will actually pay for my train ticket if I leave 10 minutes early with her. Whereas if it,
you're the nightmare that's just always going to be late because it doesn't matter.
and it's no, it's like I always find a way to be almost like perfectly on time, and I'm the kind of guy that turns up to the train as the train doors are beeping to close, and I hop on, and I think that's an element of like not being too stressed. It's a small example, but yeah, mum will literally pay for. She'll shout out to me, John, I'm leaving in 2 minutes. If you leave with me, I'll pay for your ticket. And I'm like, right, okay, mum, let's go then.
I think you've got some important points there, though, when you think about it, though, because a lot of it is about consciously choosing what you value, and if you don't take the time and consciously choose what it is that you value, then you can easily get caught up in the narrative that society's writing for you.
Yeah.
So that's how people do get caught up in that Facebook, Instagram perfect life, which is the flash car and the holidays and the millionaire lifestyle, and it becomes about the things because you don't take the time and stop to think about what actually makes you happy. You go along with what you're being told will make you happy.
Yeah.
And the rebel's the one who actually takes the time to decide what really makes them happy.
Yeah.
Again, I will say I was so lucky that my upbringing was that the memories were what was important, and that's ultimately what makes me happy. I think it's interesting though, because until I went through that loss, I don't think I'd realised that I spent a lot of time still being scared's probably too strong a word for it, but there was the reason why I was a successful investor was because I was obsessed with security, and there was always that nagging doubt that it could all be taken away. And I think having gone through those kind of experiences, it makes you realise actually that's still a negative motivator, whereas actually if the positive motivator is it's not about being scared if it was taken away, but just think how much more you could do just by doing more of the stuff that you're good at, how many more people you can benefit. The motivation for me now is about creating. I've challenged myself basically to never need my pension so that I can leave that as a legacy for mixed kids and grandkids. And that's just one challenge I've set myself. Another challenge is to talk to as many people as possible about those positive choices, choosing to make the memories as opposed to buy the stuff, choosing to invest in things that will give you time to make the memories with the people that are important, give you time to invest in growing other people. It's those conscious choices to do the positive things. And that was a big lesson, rather than spending my life being slightly scared that it all might be taken away.
Did you ever think about wanting to eliminate that thought of security?
Not consciously. I think I've come to realise that while it was a powerful driver, it only got me so far and then it started limiting me.
Yeah.
And I've recognised now that in letting go that fear of security, I've actually done a lot more. So, for example, up until 2016, when I lost Mick, at that stage, I owned my own home and I owned 3 rental houses outright. And my investment stuff was growing, but on a really conservative basis. And what I realised since then is that actually I could leverage the rentals and buy some more, generate some more opportunity. And that actually creates home for people, and invest in different things which are slightly riskier, like occasional investments in little businesses and people around me that I want to see grow. But it's not about the risk, it's about the reward of seeing that business grow, seeing it thrive, and understanding that there's value not just in terms of the investment value, but the social value of investing in the right things and not being scared.
As an investor, what do you look for in a company? What do you look to invest in? A surface level answer, of course, so I feel a lot.
It's interesting because for the traditional investments, my equity-based investments, I don't even make the investment decisions with that now. I've just outsourced all that. It's not my problem. I've invested in enough learning to understand how I can do the due diligence on the person who's going to make those fund investment decisions for me. So I don't even worry about that. The property investments, for me, it's about knowing that I'm investing in an asset that will grow in the long run. It's nice to have the cash flow. It needs to cash flow. It needs to wash its face in the short term. But with property, it's about understanding that it's not just about the cash flow, but it's about the capital appreciation. Yeah. And there's a track record with UK property. By the way, I do disagree with Robert Kiyosaki on one point, because one of his points is that the house that you live in, if you take a mortgage for the house that you live in, that's a liability, not an asset. And that might be the case in the American property market, but in the UK property market, actually, take the mortgage, invest in the house that you're living in, because if you hang on to it for long enough, capital appreciation will pay you back anyway, so you are still investing in an asset. My personal opinion, that's the only thing I disagree with Robert Kiyosaki on, but I do disagree on that. Yeah. But my experience of residential property is you buy it, you wait long enough, it'll appreciate in capital value, and you'll get the cash flow from it if you rent it out. But it's not about renting at all costs. So, for example, I tried serviced accommodation as a property model and I didn't like it because it felt like I was taking social housing out of the social housing market for cash flow reasons, and that didn't sit well with me. Now, I can understand why it might sit well with other people, and I'm certainly not criticising anyone who chooses to take that route, because you know what, we're all different, and there is absolutely a need to put contractors up in houses. So there's a need for that. It just didn't sit well with me personally, and I would rather invest in a property that I know is currently out of the housing market and put it back into the housing market. That's my personal choice. And like I say, I'm not criticising anyone, because there's a need for all of those types of investments. Fundamentally, the problem with the UK housing market is there is not enough houses. So, and that's bigger than, I can't solve that one on my own. So, with my property investments, certainly the residential property, it's about finding a property that will make me money in terms of capital appreciation, that will make me money in terms of cash flow, but also will put a social house back in the social housing market, because that's really important to society, and that's something that I want to get involved in. Commercial investments, really, I'm just looking for cash flow, because that's my pension, and that's growing for my grandkids. It's growing the legacy. In terms of businesses, that's a slightly different conversation, because for me, I certainly, it's small scale investment in people that I believe in. There is due diligence. I'm looking for a business owner who has planned, has had a look at, not just kind of said, I need investment, let me find an investor. For me, it's about, what do you need that investment for? What are you going to spend it on? How is that going to pay me back as your investor? Because it's no good taking the money on the basis that you're confident that you can return it, because you probably can. But if you've thought about, well, I want to take that money on because I want to be able to pay the salary of an employee for 6 months while they start cash flowing their own, because they now are delivering 3 times the return on the investment, then as long as you've thought through and you can evidence what that employee is going to do and how they're actually going to generate the business money, actually that's a fabulous reason to invest. And it is likely to pay a return. So it's not just give me a cash flow injection of $3,500 and I'll pay you back in 12 months' time because I've got a gut feeling that I can. It's give me a cash flow investment of $3,500 because that'll pay a salary for 2 months, and that'll get that person trained up so that they're then bringing their own salary in plus the capital that will repay the loan. Great. That's a logical mathematical investment, but it still only works if I believe in the person as well as the numbers.
That's where there's an incredible video that I watch pretty much every morning. The Mindset of a Winner by Kobe Bryant before he passed. It was I don't know what interview it was on, but the question that was asked him was, you invest in companies, what is it you look for as an investor? And he was like, it's not the company, it's the person. I look at how obsessed they are with what they're doing. I look at the mindset they have towards what they're doing. And an element of that, probably from listening to you speak as well, will come from whether or not he believes there's a need for it, and also whether it sits well with what he was doing. And I think it was something that I listened to what he was saying every morning in the shower, and I almost like drilled that into my own mindset of like, this is what I need in order to become successful. I need to have this mindset so that when I've got all these opportunities down the line, I've got the people there to invest in the company, so that I don't hold it back by believing that I need to be generating the cash flow right now, or I need to have the cash behind me right now to make it happen. And even, I mean, the first episode with Gino, Josh and Ellie literally sat there and was like, I spoke to you about it, me and Liam want to invest in me and want to make that happen. And that's something that was probably manifested through the thought process of like, I need to get myself to a level where people look at me and think, you're the kind of person I'd want to put my cash behind.
Yeah.
And with that kind of thought process, you start to realise, because just like we were speaking about beforehand as well, like people are just people in it. Like having those expectations of who someone is going to be, or before you meet them or whatever it is. I do feel like certain individuals, especially high performers that you come across, they stand out like a sore thumb. The way in which they think, everything is a reflection of their standards and what they're doing. And to me, those are the kind of people that most likely fit. I can't speak for Kobe Bryant, obviously, but from what I took from what he was saying, they were the kind of people that would fit the bill for me. And elements of what I've done on a day-to-day basis in terms of turning up to meetings and joggies in a t-shirt, and to me there are elements of wouldn't necessarily would fit the bill with what other individuals are potentially looking for in terms of that being a reflection of my standards. But I actually believe it is, because it's a reflection of how little I care about what other people think, and how I believe that what comes out my mouth is what actually matters. And I felt like that was also something that was almost like a social contract I made with other people, that if I'm turning up in joggies in a t-shirt and someone's wearing a suit, I need to talk the talk, man. I need to actually like back up what I'm saying. I need to have an element of like a backbone in what I'm believing in. And something like YN makes that so easy, because it's something that I literally built around my whole mindset, about what I believe people should be around you for, what I believe the structures that should be in place. And every time I found someone that I'm like, someone like yourself, for example, that I'm like, you need to be in the network. I don't care how I get you in the network. I don't care if you come to the focus groups every single week. I need you in this network, because people deserve to know you, and you deserve to be in a room full of other amazing people as well that could open doors to, like I was saying, either investment opportunities, or because everyone that's on board with YN, they're all people that I would back. If I had the financial freedom right now, I'd just go around each of them. Like, what do you need? I'll do my fucking damnedest to make it happen. And it's because the reason why I got into that topic was obviously from the investor aspect, but also you kept bringing up how you were doing things, but they weren't serving in the way in which was sitting properly with you.
Yeah.
How do you think you developed that like mindset towards service? So like service accommodation is something that is so easy to, not necessarily easy, from the outside looking in, it's easy to generate a large amount of cash flow for your investment.
By the way, it's not easy at all.
I know, but from the outside looking in, it looked that way. Like, what is it? A gut instinct? Is it a gut feeling? Is it something where you're like, why am I actually doing this? Like, what actually happens when you start to realize it doesn't align with you?
So I think some of it, I wanted to try it. I am a very comfortable and very confident buy-to-let landlord. It's what I know inside out, and I realised that I could carry on playing it safe, or I could try something that I didn't know. And I'm all for trying new things. So I wanted to give it a go, and it was about generating cash flow, because that enabled me then to invest potentially in more social housing. But the reality of it was I just felt uncomfortable right from the start. And I think because I felt uncomfortable right from the start, I probably jinxed the whole operation anyway, because I just didn't believe in it. And as soon as I realised I didn't believe in it, I pulled the plug on it and put a tenant back in, because then I felt comfortable, and it sat well with me. But sometimes you've got to try some things to find out whether you can make it work or not, and whether it works with your mindset or not. Like I say, I don't want anyone to think that I'm criticising serviced accommodation, because I'm not. There's absolutely a need for it, and I've got a huge amount of respect for the people who make it work. Because there's lots of different needs. We all need holiday accommodation. Contractors do need accommodation. Corporates need accommodation. There's lots of different reasons to do with serviced accommodation. It's just where I tried it and how I tried it. I tried it, didn't like it, stepped away from it, and gone back to what I do. But also, I think it gave me a more informed picture of what I do. So, for example, I'm not sure that I would ever want to just go to estate agents and buy a property anymore, because those are ones that actually your first time buyers need to buy. I need to work that bit harder and find the ones that aren't actually on the market at all. And that's what I'm about now, because that is about investing for the future, enabling me to spend time with the people that I want to spend time with, invest in growing them, developing them, as well as spending time with my family, investing for my grandkids, equally investing in society, because I'm bringing a house back into the market that hasn't been available for whatever reason.
How do you find those houses that aren't on the market?
Oh, it's hard. It is not easy. It isn't easy. It's personal connections, relationships, keeping your eyes open, actually spotting those houses where actually you can tell it's been empty for years on end, getting on land registry and finding out who owns it. Lots of different ways of doing it.
There's one in Cumbernauld Village that's been sitting sitting abandoned for as long as I've drove through Cumbernauld Village. So it was near where Bex was staying, and I actually went on Google Maps and showed it to Blair. And I was like, I'm telling you, this gaff has been abandoned for...
Oh, if you've got Blair on the case, he'll find it.
He was straight on it, trying to find out what the script was. I don't know if it ever came to fruition, but it was one of those where it was like, I started to understand it's like what's made before. The more you spend time with people, you start to realise how their mind works. So you start to spot similar things. It was very much the kind of same story. And also, one thing that really sparked my interest from speaking to Wendy. So for anyone listening, Wendy Snedden is a pioneer. Someone that is, she's an incredible individual, but she just painted an image to me that made it so easy to understand the possibility of owning a commercial property.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, in gaming terms, it's like a cheat code. Somebody just tells you something that you're like, fucking hell, really? Like, really? It's that's the steps in order to own a commercial property with, 40 rooms to host, to house 40 businesses. And I'm like, it really blows you away in it with the way in which people think and what they do, and how it's just the knowledge that has been gained. And when you're in the outside loop, why that sparked what you were saying was, when you've got the right connections, the right people, doors just fly open, man. And it's just whether or not you walk through them or not. And when it comes to the commercial property aspect, and when they brought it to me, I was like, oh man, that's another amazing thing that I could do right now. But so obviously staying focused and understand that it's something that is absolutely I can make happen at any time that I want. And even sitting and explaining it to, I went out for food with Blair and one of my mates that I used to go to school with, Brad. He's someone that's wanting to try to find his way in what he's wanting to do, whether it's within business, he wants to serve, he wants to change people's lives, make a positive impact. And I literally explained word for word what Wendy told me, and his mind, man, not even a word peeped out of me. I just kept driving, and not a word peeped out of me, and he just went, yeah, that's fucking nuts. That is absolutely nuts. And I'm like, being around the correct people, the doors that open, even someone like Andrew Ellis, for example, he opened a massive door for me when it came to like the NFT and like crypto side of things, and they're all doors that fly open, and it's just whether or not you walk through them and how much time it actually is going to cost you somewhat. Because when you're around people like YN, there's constant opportunities, there's constant doors open. It's just whether or not you are in a place to walk through them.
I think some of it's finding the thing that resonates with you as well. We talked a little bit about mindset, and mindset is about For me, it's about trusting your intuition a lot more. I know I spent in my corporate career, it was all about logic and it was about numbers and business cases and spreadsheets. And that suited me at the time. But I've recognized over the last few years that I'm spending a lot of time trying to get more in touch with my intuition, because you can analyze to a certain extent, but none of us can predict the future. So, you know what we're saying about investing in a small business, for example, you can look at all the numbers, but ultimately numbers are projections. They are a pure fiction. They're an educated fiction, but they're a fiction. So it's probably going to come down to, what's your gut feel? Do you trust that person's going to pay you back or not? And it's that intuition stuff and learning to trust that intuition. It's that intuition that's going to guide you. What's the next door to open? You know, if you'd have asked me 2 years ago, would I have written a book about how to write a business plan, I'd have laughed at you. Because it just wasn't on my agenda at all. But through lockdown, spent time with people who needed that kind of help and support and guidance. And I realised that there was some knowledge in my head that if I could get it out of my head and onto paper, it could help people. So that's why I wrote the book. The book's not about making a million. I'm never going to make a million out of the book. I'm an investor. It'll pay me back for the next 10 years. You know, it's not going to be my pension. But what it is it's a way of getting that knowledge out there. And instinctively, it felt right when I'd seen that I could help someone. And it's because I'm learning to trust my intuition that I went with that, invested in getting the book published properly as a book so that people would value it and read it.
How did that feel?
Oh, it's amazing. It was amazing. I am a published author. ISBN number and everything. You know?
Something. How did it feel to like actually, you know, I think my mum briefly brought up about the amount of sales that you're actually getting, especially at the early stages. How did that feel as well?
It felt amazing that some random people in America had bought my book. They do not know me. You know, so I always knew that a certain number of people would buy my book because people just will to support you, you know, and you know that. And it's lovely that I've got that network of support. But what I didn't realise was that people were recommending it to people and they were buying it. And these were people that I didn't know. And the fact that, you know, this wasn't even any kind of networking connection, direct connection, nothing. These are just random people in America who found my book on an online retailer and have bought it. And that's just the power of that, the thought that I can help people that I don't even know. That's just so motivating.
It's so easy to sell. Well, like in terms of like your book, also it's easier to sell someone else like than it is yourself at Elements. But even I literally, if I bring it up for even like 60 seconds, people have already bought it. And it's just understanding as well that they I think one thing as well, the size of the book is something that it's because I was thinking about it there. I'd not thought about it until the epiphany moment there. I've recently bought the 48 Laws of Power, which is a fucking humongous book, man. It's a 24-hour audiobook. And like the actual size of the book though is huge as well. And it puts me off even picking it up, man. I'm just sat there and it's just collecting dust. I know I need to read it at some point, but it's something that when it comes to like a book like yours, for example, which in total, how many pages is it in total?
38 pages, 30 minutes to read, cover to cover. I've timed it.
Have you took a speed reading course or is that just...
No, that's just normal reading pace.
And that's something that being able to, like I said beforehand, being able to read a book multiple times, not until you read it once and start to put it into play, or even read it a couple of times, you start to really absorb it. The amount of people that just obviously read through as many books as possible. When you just be able to sit and actually digest a book, you know, in that case, read by read rather than chapter by chapter. It's read by read, and that's something that I don't know how many times my mum's read it. Bex is the same. I know Kevin Bain is recently bought it and kind of putting it in play. I think who was it brought up as well? Connor Malone.
All right, yeah.
As well, and yeah, the size of it is definitely something that has the reverse effect of like the 48 Laws of Power, where I'm looking at it and I'm like, fuck that. I'll start that, you know, at a later stage.
It was a conscious decision
Yeah.
to make it as short as that. One of the things that I found a common misconception about business plans is that people think there's some magic formula about how a business plan should be. And I think that's because Prince's Trust and Business Gateway, they provide you with a template that's like 25 pages long, and then there's a 40-page PDF that explains how you fill the template in. And the reality is, you don't need most of that.
Yeah.
In fact, you need virtually none of it. What tends to happen is people think you need all of that and then they never do it.
Yeah.
When the reality is, it's better to start with just planning something, one thing. It's that North Star thing. It's having a destination.
Yeah.
And it's the simplest is often the best. If you can do that, it gives you something to aim for. Once you get used to working with that thing you're aiming for, then fine, layer another thing in.
Yeah.
You can write a full business plan if you want to. I mean, you and I know the benefit of going into a lot more detail and doing that full template business plan. And the benefit of that is if you're wanting to grow your business, or if you want to contingency proof your business, at the end of the day, we talked about dying earlier. You could get run over by a bus tomorrow. Yeah. If you want to have the kind of plan where someone else can just pick up that plan and run your business, do the detail, do the full 25-page template. I'm not saying don't do it, because it's got its place. Yeah. But the reality is, for most people running a business, they don't need anything like that. They just need to go through a process where they know where they're heading, but also they've given it enough thought to be invested in that destination. Because the thing that I talked about with you that was the most important thing for me is work out why you're doing it in the first place. Yep. Make it real to you. Otherwise, it is just a game. It's just numbers. Whereas if it's real to you, if you know why you're doing it, who you're doing it for. You're doing it for your family. You're doing it for your kids. You're doing it for as a legacy. You're doing it for YN. It doesn't matter. If you know why you're doing it, then you're emotionally invested in it anyway. And then set your North Star, set your target, and go for it.
And that's where the first run that I done of it, you didn't ask me why I'd set up a charity or why I hadn't set up as a charity, because my whole plan was about helping people, but I missed out one key part, which was the owner's purpose, why I was actually doing it, not just for the amount of help that I wanted to supply, but what was this business going to allow me to do? What was it going to enable me to actually gain, or whatever it was. And I think that was probably one of the main turning points for me, where it was like, well, fuck, what am I actually going to gain from this, or what, not even necessarily what am I going to gain from this, but like help me understand my why on a much deeper level. And it also keeps that North Star. And it's a common question that I used to get asked quite a lot to begin with, even though YN isn't necessarily set up for young entrepreneurs that are just starting out. We have a lot of high performers who are doing incredible things. But a lot of startups do come on board, and one of the most common questions that used to get asked was about a business plan, and I never used to have an answer until I had met and worked with yourself. And even had like a mate that I used to go to school with that actually asked me when I just bumped into him in his work, and I showed him your book, and I was like, well, if you want to, that's probably the best place to start. But in terms of a business plan, you just need something that is going to allow you to move from stage to stage in a planned action. Like if you've got something that you're actually planning to move step by step, it just gives you clarity on your destination and what your outcome is and why you're actually doing it in the first place. You don't need this big fuck off massive template that's you're not going to look at once you fill it out.
No.
And that's where it's a real difference maker, man. And what you're doing is needed in every front. And it's a shame that a lot of people do come into business and they don't come across you or me. They end up, thrown into the deep end of believing that they need to do a 25-page template, and that can be enough to even just put you off coming into business. Because I'm fortunate enough to be working with a lovely individual called Chloe at the moment, and she's helping me build out the academy-like aspect of YN, automated education, helping as many aspiring entrepreneurs and startups as possible. And one of the most common things that she realised, or one of the most common answers in the focus groups that she was conducting with aspiring entrepreneurs and startups, was that they had no idea what first step to take in entrepreneurship. And that's where you come in, that's where I come in, that's where we can provide with an opportunity, because first stage, usually whenever you ask anyone, at least the first stage that was put on my lap was Princess Trust, Business Gateway, all this kind of, and if I didn't have Scott originally that kind of installed that kind of mindset of like, go out, do your own due diligence, learn as much as you can about said thing, and just know that there's an abundance of people out there that you can model and learn from. I didn't have that, and then also I didn't have my mum basically being thrown out of business when she was made redundant, and then meeting incredible people like Paula and yourself and stuff like that. They're all opportunities that for me it was almost like Monsters Inc. The door comes down, the door opens, and that door is entrepreneurship. Like that was like everyone that came down was all like a separate door to me. Everyone that came down was a separate door to understand entrepreneurship on a different level. And I just believe that everyone deserves an abundance of doors. They don't just deserve one door; they deserve an abundance of doors. And greatly needed on that front. So in terms of when you're thinking about, or for any consumer, any viewer or something like that, what would be one actionable tip that they can take away in terms of that would allow them to become on the path to financial freedom?
I think certainly if they're young enough, just start small. You know, I mean, if you've got time on your side, start small, just do a little bit, because it's amazing how that builds up. Ride the compound effect, definitely. But I think more than anything else, the most important thing is question your lifestyle right now. Question your priorities right now. Like we talked about in terms of your blueprint.
Yeah.
I was lucky, my blueprint was about experiences were more important than stuff. But until you recognise that you actually want to be financially free, that it's real, it's achievable, it just becomes lip service. You know, everyone says they want to be financially free, but they don't really believe they can do it. And to be fair, financial freedom means different things to different people. It really does. I mean, I've talked before about, I see 4 levels of financial freedom. And the first one isn't even financial freedom. It's where most people start. It's where I started. I spent 25 years shackled to a job. You're shackled to it. It's not freedom at all. You're exchanging your time for money. Next stage of financial freedom for me was financial independence. So that's not freedom, but it's the first step. It gives you some choices. So that's really about having your bills paid, the basic bills paid without you having to exchange time for money. So on a passive basis, you know that, you know, everything that's going out is covered. You might not have the money for the holiday, but at least you know the basics are covered and it buys you some time. I missed that stage. I didn't realise I got to that stage. And I think if I'd have realised that, I might have given up the corporate stuff sooner than I did. So for me, financial freedom is where I am now, which is not loaded. It is about having the basics covered and also having enough for the odd holiday every now and then, to be able to, if someone asks me to go away for a weekend, I don't have to say no, because I don't have to worry about whether I can afford it or not. But it's not about the private jet and the flat in Monaco and the millions. It's not about that. It's about recognising that I've got enough now that I can choose what I do, what I spend my time with. But it doesn't make me unambitious. I would still like to do more, because I've realised now that the more passive income I've got coming in, the more I can support and I can grow the people around me. So that then gives me a reason to do it.
And the reason's the most important part.
Yeah. So question your life. Work out what financial freedom means to you, because it's probably not as much as you think it is. And once you get there, that just opens up a whole world of possibilities.
And in terms of, we spoke about the lesson from the passing of Mick and Kevin, but what's been your biggest lesson in terms of business, like in business so far, that a starter would benefit from?
Definitely surround yourself with the right people. Surround yourself with people who are going to build your confidence. Because as soon as you start in business, it's a scary place. You kind of feel like you're on your own. And if you don't recognise that there's people around you who are trying to help you, you can get stuck in that scary space. It's a bit like you said, you know, when Bex was wanting to invest in you, she was wanting to support you, and you were not wanting that because your mindset was that wasn't right. It's easy when you're in business to get into that mindset of, I'm on my own, I've got to do it on my own. when the reality is actually you're not on your own, and your biggest cheerleaders are in your network around you. If you just open up your mind and you listen a little bit, don't try and do it on your own. Listen to the people around you, because there's people who are desperate to help you.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So what have you got planned in the future? What can we expect from Kath?
So it's interesting. We touched on the deeper stuff, and I think that there's a story there that is waiting to be told. So, you know, I've gone from not realizing who I am, who I was, to realizing that yes, I'm an investor, and I'm confident that I'm an investor now. Yes, I'm starting to feel confident that I'm an author. I am confident now that I can help people by sharing experiences, and so far they've been business experiences. But I think there's probably some experiences that I can share that are more personal and emotional that might help people more. So it's coming. Not saying it's next year, but it's coming. And in the meantime, I'm still learning the investment stuff every single day.
What has helped you gain that confidence?
I mean, apart from Robert Kiyosaki and helping me put a label on it, do you know what? If I did realise, and this is something that I talk about, that I've given myself labels over the years, and sometimes it's actually having the confidence to believe the label.
Yeah.
So yeah, I stepped out under that label investor, and actually I've realised that I do know what I'm talking about, and it helps people. And I think since I realise I'm helping people, then I'm more comfortable adopting that label. So yeah, just need to work out what the next label is.
Absolutely. And in terms of your book, it's available on Amazon.
It's available on Amazon. There's also a book and a workbook package together that's available on my website. The package was about just giving people a little bit more information, a bit more support, a workbook to work through alongside the book. So, yeah, that seems to be working for people as well.
And if people are as fortunate as me, they get the chance to work with you, potentially.
Do you know what? I love working with people, and I love having a conversation, because you never know where a conversation is going to lead. I'd encourage anyone who doesn't know what their direction is to just talk to people and work out that direction. And if I can help people with that, I am up for that.
Absolutely. It's been immense. Kath, thank you so much for coming on. And also thank you for Paul, as always.
No need for the mic, mate.
No need for the mic. Love it. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening. If you are, whether you're on Spotify, YouTube, make sure you subscribe if you are on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, ring the wee bell. Well, we have had Paul sort that out for me, Paul. We're sorted in the Spotify front with Anchor now, so we'll be able to see the visuals on Spotify as well. So yeah, incredible things to come. Thank you again, Kath. It's been awesome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. Love it. All rounded up.